Hello, this is David and welcome to part 2 of my series overview of the Legend of Heroes franchise. Last time we discussed the origins of the series and the Dragon Slayer games, as well as it coming into its own with the creation of the Sky Trilogy in the 90s. While I had my start with the series upon the release of Tear of Vermilion for the PSP, many others had their first taste of the series with the much hyped, and much delayed, release of Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, the series that I'm going to be covering extensively today in this video. After the success of the Legend of Heroes Song of the Ocean, and the conclusion of the Sky Trilogy, Falcom decided to go a different route and create a new series of games, the Trails games, all interconnected to each other, in that they all take place in the same world and even on the same continent and, in some instances, the same country. This is a vast departure from the Sky games because while they technically all took place in the same world, most of the inhabitants had no clue that the other lands existed because they were split up by the Sky. Consists of Trails in the Sky, which takes place in the country of Liberl, Trails of Cold Steel, which take place in Erebonia, and the untranslated Trails of Azure and Zero, which take place in Crossbell. All these countries are on the continent of Lemuria, and on many occasions characters from one game will travel to another country to appear in a different game. The timeline is intense and the list of characters is extensive, therefore it's easy to get lost in the minutiae of just who everybody is, what their motivation is, who they're working for, and where they are at the moment. But for the purposes of this video, I'll be strictly focusing on the Trails in the Sky trilogy, and I'm also going to try not to bog you down with the small details of everybody's motivation. You need to watch a Let's Play or something for that, so let's go ahead and get started. Upon the dawn of the new millennium, when Falcom concluded the Sky Trilogy and laid it to rest, they decided to start a new trilogy, set on the war-torn continent of Lemuria and the small kingdom of Liberl, who struggles to remain independent from the power-hungry, expansionist northern country of Erebonia. Its neighbor to the east, Calvard, while not trying to conquer Liberl, is still no ally. It just has its hands full keeping Erebonia within its own borders. The people of Liberl, although a kingdom and governed by a monarch, are free to practice capitalism and thus their economy flourishes aided by their extensive use of airships, a mode of transport that its neighbors are sorely lacking in. The peaceful kingdom invests heavily in ordnance and therefore is technologically superior to its powerful massive neighbor, allowing the army, led by Cassius Bright, to fend off an Erebonian invasion during what's known as the 100 Days War. 10 years later, Cassius Bright, now a celebrated war hero, has quit the army, joined the Bracer Guild, and skyrocketed through their ranks, and now his feisty daughter Estelle and adopted son Joshua want to follow in their father's footsteps and become great bracers themselves. Through the course of their journey to become S-rank bracers, Estelle grapples with her budding feelings for Joshua, while he struggles with forgotten memories from his past. The duo meets many other bracers in their adventures around Liberl, most notably Oliver, who claims to be just a traveling musician, but he's later revealed to be Erebonian nobility, and Chloe, the princess of Liberl. While undertaking quaint, lighthearted quests for the Bracer Guild and traveling from town to town and meeting colorful NPCs, they also encounter a darker side to Liberl. The team has a clandestine encounter with Ouroboros, who's pretty much a secret society whose plan is to gather artifacts blessed by the goddess Adios in order to take over the world. They also uncover a plot to stage a coup and overthrow the queen, but like all good heroes, they foil the coup and do what they can to stop Ouroboros. So, all's well in the end until Joshua... Yeah, the game ends on a cliffhanger, and it's quite a doozy. But far be it from me to spoil it here, you've gotta play the game. The first and the second chapter were originally designed to be one massive game, but once in development, Falcom realized that in order to do the script justice, they'd have to split it into two separate games, similar to Golden Sun. But don't think that you're getting shortchanged though, because both games are huge 60-hour plus epics. They made the right decision in splitting them, but that being said, you really can't enjoy second chapter without having played the first. Second chapter opens literally just hours after the end of first chapter, with Joshua missing and Estelle on a mission not only to find him, but to openly and honestly tell him of her feelings for him. The same cast of characters from the first chapter join her this time around, but the roster expands just a tad by adding a few new characters in the mix, most notably Kevin, a wandering priest with quite a few secrets himself. Without spoiling anything, the second chapter does a great job of tying up the plot threads from the first game while still leaving you wanting more. Estelle and Joshua find happiness together, and we learn a great deal more about our party members and their motivations, as well as our antagonists, Ouroboros. For the most part, the second chapter has you returning to familiar locations from the first game, checking in with old friends and seeing how NPCs' lives have changed since your previous journey. But that's not to say that it's all the same. I mean, this isn't White Knight Chronicles 2. Falcom did an amazing job mixing with the old and the new, and there are new dungeons to explore and new treasures to have, all while keeping the integrity of the original landscape. Most notably, there's new altered spaces to explore, which are essentially interdimensional pockets that appear atop towers in each region, and the finale doesn't disappoint, having you flying atop dragons and exploring floating cities before peace can once again reign in Liberl. With the main story all nice and neatly tied up with a bow in the first and second chapters, you may be wondering, what could they possibly cover in the third? Well, the third is a strange bird. It acts as more of a dungeon crawler than the other two games in the series. You're pretty much stuck in an altered space, Phantasma, for the vast majority of the game though, but it's still not without its story. Instead of following Estelle and Joshua this time around, you're actually following Kevin, a Gauls-Ritter priest who you met in the second chapter. The game's main storyline examines Kevin's dark past, his upbringing, and how he came about becoming a Dominion Knight for the Church. It sheds a lot on elements that were previously just touched upon, and gives you glimpses into each of the main characters' pasts through the use of doors. Each door has a self-contained story which helps wrap up any remaining plot threads left hanging from the first two games. All in all, the game is very well done and a fitting conclusion to the massive Trails in the Sky trilogy. The gameplay for the entire trilogy is extremely similar and easy to grasp. Basically, you gather your party, customize them with orbments, which are the successor to the Resident Stones from Song of the Ocean, and they also work similar to Materia, in that they not only affect your stats, but they impart you with spells as well, and then you go out and you kick some ass! The music is relaxing and fitting when the graphics feel very much the same throughout the series, which I think is a good thing. Considering that you're seeing the same people and places throughout the course of the three games, you really want the visuals to be relatively consistent. Battles take place with enemies shown on the screen in a tactical turn-based grid system. You're able to move about the field and target enemies in a line or radius around them depending on the attack, similar to Chrono Trigger. Turn order is not a secret. Player characters and enemies are shown in a series of icons on the side of the screen, similar to Final Fantasy X, so you really don't have to concoct your strategies in the dark, which is great because the games all have adjustable difficulty levels, from easy for those who pretty much just want to dive into the story, and to nightmare for those who really do want a challenge. The Trails games are a cut above the rest and come highly recommended. They're really the games that got me into the franchise, and once you play the first, believe me, you'll be hooked, and you'll just have to keep on playing to see what happens to our lovable heroes next. This concludes my summary of the Trails in the Sky series, so tune in next time for coverage of the Trails of Cold Steel games. This has been David. If you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.